Hello and welcome everyone to a session hosted by Magara Law and Bluestream Recruitment. I got a real pleasure of being joined today by Belinda Elliott, who's the Managing Director of Bluestream Recruitment, and I'll let you talk about the company and what you're going to discuss in just a moment. My name is Roy Magara. I'm an employment solicitor by profession, and I founded and I run an employment law firm, Magara Law. We're out for both employers and employees across the country. But principally, today is all about Bluestream Recruitment. It's all about Belinda. And most importantly, it's what employers should want and who employers need to be in return to that. So Belinda, it's topical and it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Roy. Well, I'm Belinda, as Roy said, of Bluestream Recruitment. We specialise predominantly in engineering, office support and sales and marketing, supporting a lot of companies across the space and satellite communications sector. We also have on board HR support and learning and development, because we found a lot of companies were promoting people really quickly and they didn't necessarily have the skills to do team management, etc. So let's go straight into today. I would ask if everybody could send me a message by chat to let me know what they'd like out of today, so that I'm just not waffling on, I'm actually making myself useful. So if you could do that now, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure, so everyone, please feel free to use the chat function. If you'd rather send a private message to Belinda, i.e. you don't want to kind of shout out what you might want, feel free just to send a message to Belinda or indeed to I, but do please use that function.
That's great. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to go through the slides. Roy, can you flick through to the next one? What employers want? They want somebody who has the ability to perform the job to the best of their ability, reasonable and acceptable standards. A lot of people think they can do a job, but when they actually get in there, they can't. Yes, I agree that it's the interviewer's job to establish whether or not you have the skills for a role, but be honest with yourself as well. Do you have the skills to do this role? And if not, and you're missing one or two items, why not look into training? They're looking for the softer skills, so they're looking for people who are able to be a good team player and to be able to communicate with their colleagues so that frustrations don't mount. They want you to be professional with a strong work ethic and willing to learn. Now, the professionalism needs to be inside and outside the organisation. They're looking for people who are positive and respectful of others in their team, their colleagues, their clients, etc. And reliable, most of all, reliable. If you're going to do something, then please do it. If you can't do it, COVID has given us a fabulous platform for being able to express that we have issues at home. Caring for children, family, whatever, be open and honest. And then companies can work around those. Is there any questions on that? Andrew, Elaine, Stephanie?
I'll pipe first, if I may, while with what other people join in. I think a lot of people have found that in the last couple of years that they give a lot of themselves to their work, but they don't get much back from their work. In fact, a lot of people find themselves exiting their companies under certainly less favorable circumstances. How would you advise employees in this regard, whether from a preventative point of view or indeed when they find themselves in that situation?
Communication is key to everything. If you can't talk to your line manager, then go above them, go to HR, go to somebody and sit down and have a chat with. As I said, before COVID, it was almost a taboo to talk about that you needed to be at the school gate to pick up your children, or you had an elderly person you were looking after, or anything. I found that myself when I was trying to work because I was caring for my father, to try and explain that I couldn't be available at that time because I had something on. But COVID has allowed us now to have a life outside work. So to be open and honest, and also they have a duty of care to you. So don't be afraid to say, I need this support. And mental health and our well-being is top of the agenda for most HR and companies at the moment. Any more questions?
And throw it out to anyone on the.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, purposely I purposely changed my profile, stuff like that, so that, because just looking at what you have on the slide there,
Yeah.
it just hit home to me. It resonated with me directly.
Yes.
Because I'm in a bit of a situation at the moment whereby, pretty much all of those things, I'm experiencing it. And, so to kind of give you, I won't name the company, but what's actually happening is I've started X company, and, you have your probation period, which is standard for everyone, right?
Yes.
It's not a 6-month probation, it's a 3-month one, right? So naturally, it's less time to kind of get up to speed with things, right?
Yes.
The product is quite a complex product, right? The challenge I have is, number one, I have my medical condition. I mean, I'm totally fit, but I wear glasses, right? I'm short-sighted, right? Meaning that I have to use big fonts. That's something that I must do according to the opticians, right? So in my previous role, before I started my previous role, I wasn't wearing glasses. So it was only during COVID, when I was working there using the laptop for a prolonged period of time, my eyesight got worse. So when I did an eye test, in fact, I was wearing glasses, but it was like I could see okay. They gave me a stronger prescription saying that I need to wear it full time. Your prescription needs to be wear full time. They were even considering surgery. So it's a very serious matter. And this is something that I went through last year. It was quite emotional for me because I'm in my 30s. I've never wore glasses before. So being told you have to go for surgery potentially was shocking for me. But lucky for me, so I wore the glasses, and I've been on this journey of getting my eyesight to be stronger, and it is working. But the challenge I have right now is the place I'm working at right now. I've ordered a monitor, the big monitors.
Yeah.
And for no fault of my own whatsoever, there's a delay with that. So the waiting period is 12 to 14 weeks. But the problem is the probation is 12 weeks. That's the problem. So I've had to juggle by borrowing a friend's monitor. Don't get me wrong. I can buy a monitor, but I'm a man of principle. I believe in principles. I'm very strong on principles. And here's my thing. One thing I need for sure is a bigger monitor. That's something that's a must. And I can medically prove it. So this is being communicated to my boss. So she's very much aware of it and not really offered no support or any solutions to resolve it. So what I had to do now, when I found out it was 12 to 14 weeks, I had to send a note to the delivery company because they're abroad saying, I have this medical, can you put me to the top of the list or prioritize me? And I've still been waiting for 3 weeks. And I've been told just now, this thing is going to come, it's going to come now next month. But the problem is, it's coming 6 to 7 weeks after I sent that email. So the point I'm making, I've been hustling with my eyes, doing to the best of my abilities, juggling the monitors. So the reasonable adjustment has affected me because there's been a failing or omission to provide the equipment conducive to me to perform the role better. I can perform the role, but definitely with a monitor, it will make things easier. Why? Because my job involves a lot of critical analysis. So I have to compare data sets. And, there's a lot of analysis. The nature of my role is I'm an analyst, which means that I have to analyze data, intrinsic data, and provide recommendations. And if I make the wrong analysis, it will cost the company money. They'll build the wrong product.
If I may cut across, just only because I'm conscious of time.
Oh, okay.
I know Belinda's got quite a bit.
Yeah, I've got to be passionate there. Yeah.
Don't worry. If you're okay to kind of wrap up your point in the next couple of seconds, and then that allows Belinda to respond, and then we can continue to go through.
Okay, so what my ask or question is from your perspectives, with your employment knowledge, with your years of experience, right? Because me, I'm a novice.
Yeah.
Because I've come up with a plan of attack. So I've got I think about 4 weeks here to turn things around. And, under increased pressure. And I would say the pressure is by virtue of the strategy that was deployed from the beginning. There wasn't no strategy. So I've taken ownership of how I'm going to account for the 4 weeks. So, the 4 weeks has not elapsed. Do you have any advice for someone in my shoes who can, because I'm just trying to build confidence or trust with the management, who kind of has some doubts. But the truth of the matter is, the strategy that was deployed was not really clear. And number two, the 3 objectives that I was set, 2 of them were vague. They weren't SMART goals. So my understanding of those objectives was I had to do that and I'll be okay. But it's become quite clear to me that I'm being assessed for more things that were not in the original objectives, almost trying to make me fail. And I can prove that. So I'm kind of working around the clock to showcase my knowledge, even if it means going above my initial objectives. Do you have any solutions for that, for someone in my shoes? Because honestly, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Because honestly, it's really taken a toll on me, on my health, my well-being, and it's not fair for any person that's new, that wants to start an organization. I believe fairness is something that should be across the board. UK preach about equal opportunities. They should practice what they preach. Companies should be accountable.
Again. I'm just
I finished.
That's fine. Belinda, I'll pass on to you to answer his question, and then we'll continue. Just so I know you've got a lot to get.
Thank you. That's a little bit outside my remit in some respects, but I would recommend sitting down, re-asking them to confirm your objectives that you're being measured on, and ask them that you appreciate that it was outside their remit with regards to the time frame.
Please.
Tom Robertson calling from
Hello.
Sorry.
Hello.
Right, I've muted him. Go ahead, Belinda.
Yeah, I was just going to say that just to ask about an extension on your probation period because of the delays with the screen, and to take that into consideration. It was outside anybody's remit with regards to the delivery. You're relying on third party. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I think the main issue I have is become quite clear to me. So I would say that in the first 6 weeks, everything was all rosy.
Yeah.
Like we were working well together. So the concern came from week 6. And for the last 2 weeks, what's happened is loads of, I would say, assumptions and false accusations are being made. They're factually incorrect, and I can prove these things, but there's so many different assumptions, and I find that part of my job is risk management. I'm having to reduce the risk. I'm having to document every single thing I'm doing. People shouldn't be going through this. Do you have any advice for where there appears to be a bias? Because this is what I believe there is, a bias, a strong bias, for reasons best known to me. I know that I'm a very capable person, not that it matters, but I'm a graduate. I'm someone that's very experienced. I'm a smart person. People should be given their fair shot. Do you any advice in regards to that? Because it's not just the monitor thing I've mentioned. It's just the assumptions that have been made in the last 2 weeks specifically. So I'm trying to repair trust or doubts.
Have a look at the company grievance policy.
Yeah.
And see who it is you need to report to. But make sure you can back up all your facts.
And also another thing as well, I've got an auntie who died.
Franklin.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'll follow.
I don't want to be rude.
I think I've spoken too much. Thank you
for
for listening to me, guys. Thank you for listening to me, guys. I appreciate you so much.
That's right, Franklin. I want to make sure everyone else has an opportunity to speak to if they've got questions. But Belinda, over to you.
Has anybody else got any questions before I move on? Roy, can we go to the next slide, please? What you need to be is authentic. And by this would be the real you. Don't try to be somebody you're not to fit in with a company that you want to work for. If you have to be somebody you're not, then the company's not right for you. It doesn't matter how great they are, they're not the company for you. Also, going back to what I originally said about the job, be realistic that you do have the job as skills to do that job. And if you don't, do some training. Softer skills are harder to work on, I absolutely agree. But again, not impossible if you really want to change. Enthusiastic, it's no good going for a job purely because it's round the corner, it will save you on fuel, it's more convenient, you can get the kids from school, etc., etc. You've got to enjoy your work. You're there, goodness knows how many hours. We spend more of our life in work than we do at home. So, you know, find a company that you can be enthusiastic for working for. Professional, we need to be professional at all times, both in and outside work, because you're representing that company. And again, reliability. This is the biggest complaint I get from clients at the moment, is about people being unreliable. But that goes back to my original thing when I said about communication. We all have lives outside of work. As long as we're communicating those with our line managers, etc., then it shouldn't be an issue. If you do have a line manager that's not listening to you, then go to HR or go to somebody else. But you need to start there and document your complaint. Next screen.
Before I jump onto that, Belinda, I've got a quick question for you, if I may. So I think traditionally it seemed that a lot of work is measured in hours or how much time is on the clock.
Yes.
And of course, less time was typically indicative of poor performance, for example. Yes. And it seems presently there is a much more kind of hands-off nature approach, particularly with remote work,
yes.
Where employers focus more on increasing outputs.
Yes.
How do employees of today deal with that shift?
I think as long as you need to be fully aware of the expectations on you, and what's expected of you during that time that you're working from home or wherever. And also, again, communication is key. It's going back to maybe having a daily catch-up with your line manager, a weekly catch-up, whatever's relevant to your role. And if you feel that you really, really don't know what you're supposed to be doing, ask for targets or some kind of expectation. If you've got a project, then you need to know when that project needs to be completed by and what the qualifying factors are for that project, what it is they want you to achieve. Do you want the whole project, part of the project? What area is your responsibility there? And know who you can turn to if you've got any questions.
Thank you. And then there's another question which is in the chat.
Sorry,
someone has asked.
Yeah.
Someone has asked, how would you define professional? Do you think people truly understand what professional means?
Good question. It varies from industry to industry, doesn't it? You've got a creative industry, and being out partying, etc., is completely acceptable because it's the very nature of your industry. Just common sense, I think, in professionalism, the way you speak to people, the way you act around people is professionalism in my eyes. Has anybody got any questions on that one? Roy, do you want to add?
Yes, Masimba's got a question. I was going to say, Masimba has got a question.
Thank you, Roy. I do have a question. Firstly, apologies for coming in late. But I would like to ask a question here. I have a small business
Yes.
based here in Oxfordshire, and it has taken off since the lockdown after the pandemic was lifted, and working from home is quite important to my business. As I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to bring in some junior people to come in and join my team.
Yes.
But the payment structure that I've got to use is hourly based.
Yes.
And it's difficult to incorporate that with the way that I work, and the level of responsibility that I am able to give to these junior people.
Yes.
It would be easier, actually. This sort of touches on what Roy was talking about here. It sort of made me think about that. Setting targets is a little bit easier, but it then what the problem that I've got now is it then puts me in a murky position legally, because I don't know if there is a legal basis to work in the way that I'm trying to, because I don't want to go foul of the law. I want to be fair to the people joining my team. I don't really know how to do that.
Sorry, you've lost me here.
I want to grow my team.
Yes,
I want to grow my team.
Yes.
I have to pay them hourly.
Why hourly?
Because of well, they would be junior.
Are they contractors or they employed directly?
I'm looking to employ them directly.
So you can give them an annual salary. You don't have to pay them hourly.
Well, that structure works more easily on an office.
Yeah. Okay.
With junior employees that have limited responsibilities, they would need a lot of hand holding, and because we're not going to be in an office for me to be able to provide that.
Yes.
It's a lot more difficult to measure. If we were all in an office, it would be a lot easier. 9 to 5, it'll be a lot easier to actually do that. But working from home, that oversight isn't quite there. I really don't know how to handle that.
I've got a couple of people who work remotely for us. We do it on a task basis. This is the task. This is the time that's expected for you to do that task, and an element of trust.
With contractors, they're a bit more experienced. It's a lot easier to get that target based. Yes. I need it by 8 p.m. I need it by Friday. Yes. I need it by the end of this month. It's a lot easier to do that. So you're suggesting doing the same thing? Absolutely.
I mean, you're employing them. So if you start the ground rules from day one, they'll know that's what's expected of them. If you start one thing and then trying to change it, it can be more difficult. But if from day one, you would be expected to do ABC, and then maybe have, whether it's half an hour at the beginning or the end of the day, or you meet up once or twice in the week to see how they're going.
If I can flip that in a way as well, and kind of join in on Masimba's question. So do you find, given that Masimba's looking potentially for someone fairly junior to come in, there's going to, from what I understand, Masimba, correct me if I'm wrong, training is going to be needed, of course, extra time more than someone else who's more experienced is going to be needed too. Trend-wise, or in terms of what employers should be looking for, as it were, is that kind of structure fit for purpose in today's sort of recruitment age, as it were? Or ought Masimba to be looking at a different structure, for example, biting the bullet? Because, for example, employees, you might suggest, in your experience, these days actually do want the certainty of this time till this time, I'm going to get X amount at the end of the month, as opposed to a 0-hour contract, for example, or a pay by job scenario. Perhaps you might provide Masimba with some further insight to that.
Exactly. Yes, I was thinking about 0-hour contracts, but as a junior employee, I don't know if that's fair. I'm not even sure if that's legal. I don't know if that can work.
people are very fond of the zero. At the moment, people want certainty. It's the economic environment is not good. They have their rents, which are mounting all the time, and all the other bills. People want certainty. But one thing younger people do want is flexibility. So maybe you can offer them that, and maybe they'll just want to work part-time. And also that I think sometimes working for a startup can be more exciting at the beginning of your career. So use that as a selling point, in as much as they get more involved. Whereas the larger organizations, they're very much put in their box because this is your role, somebody else is doing the other bit. Whereas in a smaller organizations, you're just pulling together. What sort of work are we talking about as well? Because engineers love working on their own. If they, you know what I mean, they're quite happy. And there's others who do need the interaction. So what kind of work are we talking about?
Architecture.
Architecture, that's fine. Well, I would imagine they'd like to get their heads down and get on with their drawings and measurements and all the other things.
To be honest, if they don't like working on their own as architects, then they will have to learn to do it.
Yeah, they're in the wrong job, aren't they?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Tim, have a question, Belinda.
Sorry?
Tim, over to you. Tim Corden.
Hi, Tim.
Rather, has a
Nice
question.
to meet you.
Hello both. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Belinda. In my experience, communication is the key to pretty well everything that goes on at work. A lack of communication is when it tends to go a little bit wrong. So that's always been a theme I've expounded when I've done presentations and so forth for startups, etc. Keep the communication. I think, thinking about what Masimba's just said, which is interesting, I have done with a client set a series of SMART objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic times, objectives for those employees. There's only about 6 of them, but they weren't working to any particular objectives. And I think it may move on to setting a vision for the company, etc., which it cascades down. But you actually help them do it for themselves. You can give them general guidelines, make sure they are smart, and then agree it with the business owner. But it certainly helps, I think, in terms of what they're trying to achieve for the good of the company and the good of themselves as well. And I think, Simba, I'm assuming the folk you're wanting to employ at perhaps the younger end of the spectrum, experience is a really, really important thing as well, which is what I tend to think people look for, is good experience, worthwhile. So I wouldn't say it offsets the wage or anything like that, but taken in partnership, it's if you can provide good practical experience, I think that'd be a real help.
Absolutely.
That actually brings me nicely onto the next position, because then would I then be employing them as employees, or would they be contractors with less experience? Because the difference between employees and contractors is about the level of control and providing certain equipment and stuff like that. Would I be trying to set them up to be contractors and then giving them a certain amount of time? Because legally, I think that might be easier to define.
It depends on whether they're only working for you. I think you can have a contract for a certain period of time, but if you intend to keep them for a couple of years, I would suggest putting them on your books. And also, it's got to meet the needs of your business. Are you going to need them consistently? If you are, then employ them. If you're not, then contractors isn't your only way forward. But you can't guarantee they'll be there when you want them, because they will be doing contracts for other people too.
Can they be contractors on a fixed term?
Fixed term contract, but again, I know people pull out a contract sometimes because they get a better offer elsewhere. So if you need the stability, a permanent role is always the better option.
Okay, it's good to know that that's an option.
Could you do a combination, so you've got an element of stability with 1 or 2 permanent staff, and any overflow to a contractor that you can turn to? And does that contractor necessarily need to be young? Could that contractor be more experienced while you're training your permanent member as a staff? It's just a thought.
Thanks.
That's some good thoughts there. Thank you. I'll just highlight one more question, which is in the chat, Belinda, and then I'll pass back to you if you want to move on with your slides. Question is, do you have any advice for employees on how to balance being professional with being genuine?
Genuine, good question. I think most of us, if you are being genuine, are being professional in the respect that you're honest, you try to do your best. I mean, would you, as a person who is constantly rude to people, be employed there in the first place? If I'm honest, I think most people who are authentic and true to themselves are often open and honest too, and therefore professional. Roy, you got anything to add to that one? Because that's a tough question.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I think it's that kind of balance of people bringing their whole selves to work, and then of course there are people who, in my view, sometimes go over or push boundaries that are not necessarily right for the workplace, as it were. For example, someone might think, well, I've had cases where an employer has said, we have a case against someone who says that we had unfairly dismissed them, but actually they came in, they used foul language at work, we don't prefer that, or they did this or acted in a different sort of way to what our values are. They said that's just who they were and they ought to be accepted, as it were, for who they are. That's them bringing their genuine selves to work. But from the employer's point of view, it's not professional. So I interpreted that question differently, but more so in that context. And I do think that there is a place, of course, for people bringing their personalities and who they are into the workplace, and that's the beauty of diversity in that context. But of course, there has to be a certain limit, as it were, a certain boundary, and rightly so, where professionalism and that other line of who you might necessarily be on a Friday or Saturday night, that's got to stay somewhere else.
The only other thing I would add was personal space is, if you are a very gregarious person, remember the person next to you may not be. And, you know, you have to respect everybody else's personalities. And I think that goes on hand in hand with it.
Quite right. I'm with you on that.
Any other questions? I was going to go through applying for a job and things. Does that apply to anybody here? Because if it doesn't, then there's no point.
I know it definitely applies to a couple of people here.
Does it? Okay. Then let's go to the next slide then, please.
Oh no, I beg your pardon. I think it does apply to a couple of people who are in this meeting that I know of, who I think benefit from your advice.
Okay.
On this particular thing.
Then please, can we go to the next? Oh, we've got it. Okay. I can't see my screen for all the bits that are probably now. So it's really, really good if you're moving on. There's twofold here. If you've been made redundant, it's upsetting. You will get angry, etc., etc. But it's an ideal opportunity, if you've not been entirely happy doing what you've been doing, to rethink. And so therefore, the old-fashioned pieces of paper with a pen, I think, works really well. Take a piece of paper and write down the things that you like doing and those that you don't. Look at the things that you like doing and think to yourself, what could I do utilizing those skills? And if you need to do further training, I'm always an advocate for that. Look at courses. If you're at a position in your life where you want a complete career change, don't expect a company to just give you the opportunity because you want to do that. You have to show that you genuinely want to do that, and whether that's if you're currently working, go to a company, department in your company, and ask if you can shadow somebody in your own time, or spend some time there, or go and do a course, do some training, show somebody that you genuinely want to change in that direction, and you are taking some responsibility for that. When applying for a job, ask yourself, do I genuinely have the skills and the experience for this role? Monday mornings is the most stressful time in the office for us, going through applications from the weekend. A prime example, and my favourite, is a man who ran a fish and chip shop apply for the head of spacecraft engineering at 120k. I would love to have offered him an interview, but we would have wasted our time. And I know there's an element of people who are made to apply for X number of jobs to get their benefits, but be realistic, because you're only setting yourself up for a fall. If you really, really want to work for a particular company, ask yourself why, but wait, be patient until a role comes up that has got your skill set. Because if you keep applying for roles time and time again with a company, they'll stop even looking at your CV. They'll recognize your name, and that'll be the end of it. And a CV, somebody takes about 6 seconds to read your CV. They're looking and they're scanning it. What tends to happen, especially with the larger organizations, you've got a junior member of staff there whose job it is to filter the CVs. Yes, no, or maybe. If you're on a maybe pile, you'll never get invited along. And they're looking for keywords. So utilize your profile at the top of your CV to explain why you're applying. So if they're looking for ABC, talk about ABC. Your skills when you've bullet pointed, there's CV tips and everything on our website, and I'll send you some links after this if I will be helpful in doing that. But basically, anything that they're looking for, get to the top of your lists when you're bullet pointing what you're being done. And do you need to put it all? You've got to have something to talk about at interview. Utilize the page as well. You know, these massive margins and cramping up and massive font sizes, don't use them. It's got to look professional and get as much relevant information on page 1 so somebody looks at page 2. If you're catching their eye on page 1, then you've got a good chance they will look at page 2. A cover letter, a lot of people say there's a waste of time, blah, 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 blah. I don't think so. Again, it's a good opportunity to reinforce your reasons for applying for the job. Okay, next slide, please.
Before I do, Belinda, there's a question in the chat box.
Yeah.
At all. Someone said, do you have any advice for finding easily obtainable work during the process of trying to find other employment? Because it's such a long, complicated process. I do need to pay for rent, food, etc. Or is it better to go on job seekers allowance? And is it enough to survive on in the meantime? So I've got a multifaceted question there for you.
Regarding the benefits system, in all honesty, I have no idea what they're paying. And that's something you would need to investigate. There are options. Some agencies do temporary work. So you could look at that option. It isn't as popular as it used to be. Or contracts. You could do a contract somewhere while you're looking for, and you just never know. I've often known people just to go in, somebody on a temporary role, not really that enthusiastic about it, but when they've got through the door, the people they're working with and the projects they're working on, and they ended up staying. So you just never know what doors those kind of opportunities can open up for you. Any other questions? Sorry, any other questions?
It doesn't appear to be so. I'll ask one more question and then we'll move on. As an employer, and having recently been through a hiring process, I've certainly had some faux pas in terms of employees and their application process. Yeah. Not least someone turning up to the interview in a tracksuit. But that aside, on the subject of applying for jobs, can you maybe tell us maybe one faux pas that employees ought to avoid, or indeed from the employer perspective, what employers ought to avoid from that initial kind of recruitment process? And I'll change the slide while you answer that.
Yeah, good question there, Roy. Today we have the internet and there's no excuse not for finding out something about the company. So it's always good to try and mention something about the industry. If you've got some industry experience, it's always helpful. Obviously, no swearing in your interviews or anything like that, or when you're applying. A good thing is to pick up the phone and ring a company and have a chat with them about the role rather than applying if you're not sure. That's one way of doing it. And then they'll look up your CV too. But have genuine questions. At this stage of applying, just do your homework. And as I said, do not go applying for a job where you really, I want to do it. I'd love to be head of space and satellite communications, but you've got to take some responsibility. You know, you need to go to college and do some training or have something relevant to bring to the table. As desperate as clients are for staff at the moment, because it is very much a candidate market, they still want the best. Okay. And another thing I would say is if you're in two minds of something, go for it. Because more often than not, it's the people you work for and the company when you get in through the door that might surprise you. But if you haven't got the skills, don't. Please don't. And companies like us just reject, and it's setting yourself up for a fall of constant rejection. And if you're out of work and you're looking for work and you're constantly not getting any response or rejections, it doesn't do your morale much good.
Quite right. Thank you, Belinda. We have about a good 15 minutes or so left. So I'm going to defer to you. We're on the interview slide.
Okay, that sounds good. Prepare. Number of times a client has said to me, they didn't do anything. They didn't know the job description. They hadn't looked at our website. Why did you send them to us? And we try to do interview prep with candidates if we can. We never, ever know what questions are going to be asked. It's more about a style of answering. So I would prepare. Just, you're not expected to be an expert on a company and know their stocks and shares and every single managing director for the last 10 years, but know something about what they're doing. Know something about the job role. And I would print off the job role and your CV and take it along with you. And during an interview, most of us will have a mental blank through nerves. Nerves can take over. Is write down when you did particular things, just in case you have that mental blank, and make some notes. The interview that is there for you too. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask questions, but make sure they're appropriate and at the right times. We've had candidates whereby they really wanted to ask this question and it's absorbed them, and they've ignored everything else and then just splurted it out, and it's given them a really bad impression. It doesn't matter how good the question is, that they weren't focusing or listening on what they were talking about to begin with. The company, find out a little bit about the company, you know, why the positions become available, who you be working with, those kind of things. It's really good to show it's more than just about the role, or it's the whole picture that you're interested. And never, ever, ever talk about salary and holidays at interview, unless, of course, they bring it up. It's just a no-no at the first interview. Any questions from that?
Belinda, again, you make great points, if I may. I remember many, many years ago, I worked in the construction audit organisation, and we had an interview with what were called general foremen in those days on a Monday. And one of these general foremen, the applicants, had actually gone to the sites around London and looked over the hoardings and had some ideas to what the company did, and it always left an impression with me. And although he didn't get that job on the day, I retained his details and made sure he got a job with the company in the future, because that's, to your point, just the very sort of person that you want with you, because they'd done the preparation and they'd taken the time and effort on a Sunday to actually do that, and it does leave a good impression.
Absolutely. And you know, if you've got the time, if it's not too far away, to go and find it the night before your interview, so that you know, if you're caught in traffic or anything, that you're not late for your interview, because you know exactly where you're going. And also the way you dress. Do not go in jogging bottom. Trust me, we had a guy, 85k salaried, senior scientist, went for his interview in trainers, pair of jeans and an old t-shirt. Naturally, he didn't get the job, and I didn't feel I needed to insult him at that level. But yes, I should have insulted him. But you know, in their eyes, he didn't have any common sense. Nobody would turn up for an interview like dressed like that. So, you know, you go into a wedding, you wouldn't go in your pajamas, is what I always say. So, unless it's a pajama wedding, of course, but that's another story.
Those are rare.
Who knows these days? They apparently got wedding frocks. Any questions there?
I think
Yes.
Lucinda's got a question.
On the salary side, what's the best way to set a salary scale?
Is to look at market research, do some market research. There will be some salary surveys out there that will tell you, and also maybe jump on some of the job boards, put the job title in and see what other people are advertising. Is always a good way. If I'm uncertain and the client's not giving me a salary banding, that's what I'll do.
Another controversial question, well, I say controversial, it's seemingly controversial question for you, Belinda, in terms of your own opinion. To show salary on a job advert or not to show a salary on a job ad?
I like to. I think you should be upfront. You're just wasting everybody's time if you don't. But yes, I think we should be putting salaries on there, and you're not wasting your time then. A good one for you, if you're interviewing candidates and you want to know about salary, you need to know what their previous salary was. That will give you an indicator. You know, because we have people who are on, I don't know, 35,000 that suddenly want 50. Be realistic. You can't expect a £15,000 pay rise. So that can give you an indicator, because some people, I wouldn't say you pay them less than they're worth, but at the same time, if they haven't got the experience, you can give them maybe a 5k pay rise and they're really happy because they're getting that, and you're saving some money along the way.
Belinda, I don't know if you'd come across some experiments going on in New York, whether it's New York State or the city, I'm not sure, but they're being forced to name salaries, put salaries down on every advert.
I think that's been looked at in this country too, to be honest. And we've got clients now who are saying, this is the job description, and they're not giving us a salary bracket. We're having to guess. And so we're telling candidates, I'm sorry, we don't know the salary on this one. We're being advised they want to know your current and expected salary, which is crazy. And I think that's part to do with the current market situation, because it's really, really tough to get good candidates. Nobody wants to move from the job. Better the devil they know at the moment because of the rising cost of bills and the uncertainty going on. And we had a chap recently who got offered a job, and his boss actually gave him, he was on 31.5, gave him a £14,000 pay rise so he wouldn't leave. And he turned around and said to me, I don't like working there anymore, but I have a young family and I can't afford to turn that kind of money away. So do you really have that person engaged with you if you're going down that route just to have somebody on board? And if you've got to pay over the odds for a junior person, are you not better investing in a more experienced person? And without being ageist, I would seriously look at people over 50. Majority of them won't have young children, maybe grandchildren responsibilities, but they still have a lot to offer. We may have one foot in the grave, but we still can work.
Quite right. Well, Jeremy Hunt recently was very much on that same level in terms of encouraging 50s and over back into work, etc.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it is a good combat to what the media looks to portray in terms of an increase in age discrimination cases. So an interesting dichotomy there, but forces of nature are working together. There's one more question in the chat.
Sorry, my chat keeps disappearing.
No, not to worry. I'll condense it. It's a fairly long one. So the short version is, evidently it's a job seekers market, and often, particularly in admin assistant roles, there are a high level of applicants. So the question is, can you mention what things to do to stand out from all other applicants? Because this particular individual says that they often find themselves not chosen.
Okay, I'm happy to talk to this person afterwards if they want to. But generally, depending on your market, if you're going for a marketing role, then your CV needs to be quite creative because you're going into a creative role. For a general administration role, it's all about, as I said earlier on, utilizing your profile to show that you can got the skills and experience they need. And as if you've got industry experience for the company you're applying for, that's helpful too. But they need to be able to see very quickly that you have the relevant experience. And less is more. If you can put, don't be so wordy, bullet point things, you're straight to the point. And they don't need to know you drive a Vauxhall Golf and you've got a dog called Frank or any of that. It's purely what you can do in relations. Your hobbies and interests should be on your CV because it makes your CV more personal, but it should be at the very end. Any other questions on that one? As I said, I'm really happy to chat to that person afterwards.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm cautious we have about 5 minutes left. It's up to you how you'd like to run the next 5 minutes.
I'd like to throw in some of the interview questions that gets asked, if that's okay. So if we can go to the next slide, I haven't got it in front of me, so I'm not sure what it was. Okay, keep going. Okay, I'm going to run through these really quickly, and if anybody's got any questions, they come to me, ask them. Why are you interested in the company? Know your reason for being interested in that company. If it's down the road, round the corner, more convenient, no. Every company's vain. They like to think they're the greatest company going, so they want you to be excited about them. The job role, you need to know about the job role. Why are you interested in the job? Again, they want you to be excited by it. You don't need to be sitting there with a big beaming smile on your face or jumping up and down, but use expressive words. Like, I think this is an exciting opportunity for me to utilize and develop my skills. You've got a good reputation, something along those lines. The cliche 5 years, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Never, ever, ever pigeonhole yourself as to doing a specific role. Technology's moving on, the market's moving on, and you're planting a seed. If you're offered that job, you're making a rod for your own back. Because if you said you wanted to do something specific, that would be in the back of their heads forever when they're planning for the future. So, you know, you're a growing company and want to grow and develop with you. You're showing, therefore, you want to develop. You're not over ambitious, because again, that's another worry when somebody's employing, because they're recruiting for that particular role. Weaknesses, we've all got them. Depending on how the interview's going, you could make a joke of it and say chocolate biscuit to lighten the mood. But any weaknesses that you do give, you need to turn it around. Okay, so my Excel skills aren't the greatest, but I'm working on it. I've been doing some training on YouTube or something. Just turn it into a positive. No yes, no answers. Give examples. Assume somebody hasn't seen your CV. And the biggest mistake everybody makes is when they feel so relaxed there. The interviewer is making it so informal. Just don't forget you're at an interview. Can we have the next slide, please? Next one. Now, these are curveball questions I'm throwing at you. If you're an animal, what would you be? There's loads of variations on this one. Your answer doesn't matter. It's your reaction. And most normal people do not sit around thinking, if I was an animal, what would I be? Well, I hope they don't anyway. So it's your reaction. Do you do Boris Johnson and waffle for an hour and still not answer the question, or do you stop and think about it? And this is a good question. Most people, when they start a job, they don't know something. So how are they going to work with this? Next one. What would your best friend say about you? Oh, I'm a chatterbox. My friends say I'm the life and soul of the party. And on a Friday night, I'm on that table dancing. Alarm bells, chatterbox. Do you want chatterbox in your team? Drunk on a Friday night? Is she going to be coming in on a Monday morning with a heavy hand, or he, or whatever? Just, it's an opportunity for an employer to catch you out. So they're looking for loyal, supportive, etc. And the next one, Roy? Sorry, this is a whistle stop. What would your enemies say about you? I've actually had a lady in tears over that. None of us like to think we've got enemies, and maybe that's what we can say. It's, again, a reaction question. You know, sometimes we have to ask somebody something that's not very comfortable. How would you react? So that, again, so it doesn't matter how badly you answer these questions. try and ignore them and move on. And they're used when you're sitting comfortably in an interview and you're feeling confident, and all of a sudden a stupid question comes in. Just ignore it and move on. And one good one, a chap was asked once when he was at interview, had he ever made a mistake and how did he rectify it? And he said, yes, I married the wrong woman and divorced her. And for him, it actually broke the ice. Even the client said to us, actually it broke the ice, because up until that point we were unsure of him. But everybody relaxed more after that. So again, any question is depending on how comfortable you feel. And finally, Roy, I can't remember what else I put on. Right, end of interview. This is the horrible bit, I think. Good questions to ask when they say, have you got any questions? Because they just told you everything about the job and the role. You shouldn't have anything. If you have, great. Don't ask about salary and holidays. But challenges in the role, what do they see the challenges in the role after the next 3 to 6 or 6 to 12 months? That will help you because it will give you an indicator on what period of time they expect you to do it and get up to scratch. How long and why? How long have you worked for the company and why do you like working for the company is a good one. You're throwing the ball in their court and everybody likes to talk. So you get more of an insight into the company. Reservations. Do you have any reservations about my suitability for the role? Now, you're not asking if you've got the job, but you're giving the interviewer a chance to come back with anything that might be niggling them. Next steps. You could ask them what the next steps are if they haven't already told you. Don't forget to thank the interviewer for their time. And the best tip I can give you, as soon as you get out in that car, write down your feelings about that role. Because if you're in two minds, that's a very helpful thing to go back to and review. And that's it. Any questions? And that's us. Anybody got any questions? Chat.
Really good, Belinda.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I have a quick thought for Franklin at the start of it. If
Yes.
I know we don't want to engage too long on that, but he may seek to extend the probationary period. Communication, back to your original point, is everything. Perhaps he should go back to the employer and just say, look, given all the weight I've had for the extra large fonts and so forth, could we extend the probationary period for 4 months rather than 3 months? At least it's offering a solution or a way.
Yeah. Absolutely, I agree with you entirely. And you know, but don't place blame on anybody. It's one of those things. It's outside our control. Could we consider extending my probation?
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Got time for just one more question. If anyone has a question
Something in the chat
or a comment. No, it doesn't look like it.
No.
Apart from all the thanks and praise for all of your nuggets of wisdom there, Belinda. So thank you very, very much.
You're
indeed. Belinda's contact details are on the screen now, so make a note of those. We'll get an email out with the link and with the slides if need be, and all those links that you highlight as well, Belinda, as well as something to this recording.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Do you
Nice to
mind
meet you.
how you go? And all being well, see you soon. It's goodbye from me and it's goodbye from Belinda.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you both.
Bye.